Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie, and I'm the moderator for the Service in My Recovery workshop today. Please keep your microphone muted as we open the meeting with the Serenity Prayer together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, everyone. Our speakers today are Pat O. and Pam L. from Oregon and also from England, I believe. Today's workshop will be on tradition and concept number 3. For those of you that don't have it quickly memorized, tradition 3, which has the principle of identity, is the only requirement for OA membership is a desire to stop eating compulsively. And concept 3 is the right of decision based on trust makes an effective leadership possible, and that principle is trust. The 12 steps and 12 traditions of Overeaters Anonymous and the pamphlet, The 12 Concepts of OA Service, are great resources for more information about the 12 traditions and 12 concepts, and are available at the OA bookstore, which can be found on our remodeled OA website, www.oa.org. To stay in harmony with traditions 6 and 10, we ask that the speakers and the members who share mention only OA-approved literature. After each speaker, there will be time for sharing. This workshop is being recorded and will be posted on the OA website podcast page, as well as other podcast feeds such as iTunes. If you speak, it's considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. To preserve your anonymity, please use only your first name or a fictitious name when you share. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. Please use special workshop meeting number 82278 when making your contributions. Go to www.oa.org and click on contributions. Contributions may also be mailed to the World Service Office, which is P.O. Box 44020, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, 87174. If you don't have that information, and I said it too quickly, virtually any piece of OA literature will have that available for you. If you do have any questions regarding contributions, you may contact the World Service Office at 505-891-2664. Thank you so much for helping us carry the message. Now I would like to introduce our first speaker, Pat O., who's from Oregon. Pat, go ahead and share with us on Tradition 3.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you for everyone who's dialing in on this particular day where we lost an hour's sleep. So congratulations to everybody whose clocks are on the right time. I was very happy to be asked to do this because this is yet another stretch for me. And OA, my experience in OA has been about stretching my comfort zone. It seems to have always turned out just fine. Amazing. So let me tell you a little bit about my background, my experience in OA. My life was always measured by success. I was successful on diets many, many times until I wasn't anymore. I was better than you or I was worse than you because of my education, my weight, my fitness, my economic standing, or a host of other measures that I would devise to place myself and you somewhere on that spectrum. As Woody Allen is said to have observed, I didn't want to belong to any club that would have me. I didn't want to belong to OA. I avoided it for years because my success at losing the weight and keeping it off was right around the corner. I have the graphs and charts to show you where I was and am with my weight, stretching, pun intended, back over 40 years. I thought that there was a magic band around my body's capacity for gaining weight that stood rock solid at my top weight at 39 years old and 9 months pregnant with my only child. Late in my 50s, I found that was not a rock-solid top weight when I shot past it. Nothing is more demoralizing than intellectually knowing how to eat right and have a healthy body weight, and I did know that. So my torment and what I kept asking myself was, why couldn't I do that? It seems like I knew it all until I finally knew nothing. I was gifted with desperation, as the truth that compulsive eating was a progressive disease started to dawn on me. I was eating, binging more and more. I lost more and more of my life until I reached the point of not wanting to live anymore. Because a conventional suicide seemed a little bit too messy and a little bit too damaging to my husband and daughter, I concluded that death by eating, though not immediate, would be my manner of killing myself. It seemed an appropriate time to finally try a 12-step program, as I could see nothing else on the horizon that could possibly work for me. So that's when I finally walked through the doors. I had the only requirement for membership, a desire to end the pain of my life as a compulsive overeater. I had no idea how this could work, since I knew I didn't have another diet in me, and diets were all I knew. After crying through my first meeting, I asked at the end, "So what do I do now?" A kind person at the meeting replied, "Well, there's the 4 words." I was sure this was the magic formula. They were going to lay it on me, and this would make all the pain and the weight disappear. "So what are the 4 words?" I cried. He replied, 3 meals, no snacks. All right, okay, that's simple and straightforward, and that's where I started. It turns out I'm kind of a patent leather shoes, rule-oriented girl, so I found out I had to get a sponsor and I had to work the 12 steps, and so I did that in short order. My first sponsor liked our workbook that goes along with the 12 and 12, and so I marched my way through the workbook and did the steps in that way with her. I found out about the tools, and I looked into service. And I like structure, so I was curious about how OA was organized. I didn't know then that technically OA isn't organized. But I went to Intergroup, and I enjoyed it. I took a service position as a stand-in since I didn't yet meet the abstinence requirements. When I reached the point of matching the abstinence requirements, I was elected to the job. I took service positions at my 2 meetings, and at 3 months, my sponsor said I was ready to be a sponsor myself, and I balked at that. I did not feel at all ready. It took some time, but I finally dove into that pool. I have to say, over time, sponsorship has become one of the most precious parts of my program. Meanwhile, in service, I was stretching, certain operative word here, my comfort zone and doing the next right things. I found myself working with and enjoying people who would have formerly put my teeth on edge. It's a joke in my family that I'm known as the great teeth grinder. And whenever I see something I don't like or I'm holding something in, they tell me I'm grinding my teeth. Fortunately, they also tell me I don't do it so much anymore, and I'm really happy about that. I also found that people are fun, and I can learn a lot when I listen and take the time. Who knew? In my meetings at Intergroup, at Region 1, and at World Service Business Conference, I see folks with amazing physical, emotional, and spiritual growth. In OA, I also see folks who are struggling. I find that more and more I come to feel about them, just as our invitation states. You may not like all of us, but you will come to love us in a special way. It's a miracle that's coming true for me. One of my meetings includes in our format, raise your hand if you're willing to stay a few minutes after the meeting to help someone craft an abstinence plan for today. I love how in OA, hope springs eternal. We will not give up on you. Please don't give up on me. And we can all have the promises come true in our lives. I cannot do it alone, but with the fellowship and my higher power, I can do it. No surprise, I can do it one day at a time. Okay, so a little bit of qualification. At the end of April, I will have been in OA 6 years, and I will have been abstinent for 6 years. I currently am holding a service position at Intergroup, and I'm holding a service position at Region, and I'm a delegate to World Service Business Conference. So that's another pool service that I really dove into. I really enjoy it. I'm at a point in my life, my husband and I are retired, that I have the time for this and the volunteer hours that it involves, and I find that working with OA folks is a very rewarding experience, something that adds an awful lot of satisfaction and joy to my life. It's also really novel for me, as you could tell from my story of judgmentalism and some of those character defects, that having a sense of friendship and camaraderie is a new experience for me, and something that I had no idea could be so wonderful. So those are all the positive aspects. Not all; they go on for miles, but some of the major positive aspects that being in OA has brought to my life. It's also nice to be maintaining a healthy body weight, which was something I was never able to do ever in my life. That's also a great feeling. Okay, about the principle that goes along with our tradition. The only requirement for OA membership is a desire to stop eating compulsively. The principle that goes along with that is identity. And I found also that identify and identity in the dictionary are right one underneath the other. They differ by only one letter, and they're closely related. And I found that I think that is also true when we talk about identity. Since the only requirement means I know there is one basic and important thing I share with every OA member. We are all compulsive eaters. That and the reason we are here together in OA unites and bonds us. It overcomes the walls I was so good at building between me and everybody. It also means that we have the strength, experience, and hope to share with one another. Not expertise, not magic, not any shortcuts. Only wisdom from the trenches of trying to fashion a spiritual journey out of our physical and emotional life. What does it mean to meet the only requirement? It means that I am starting to look at life as it is, the reality of my situation, without denial. I am sharing that truth with others who accept me for it. I am practicing honesty about myself and finding myself in a group to which I fully belong. Fully belong. Now that's a phrase. That is not an experience I have had ever in my life before. It means I can't fail OA. I can only pick myself up anytime I do not behave in a loving manner to myself and others. I can learn from it and I can press on. I get to get better and better every day I work it. I find my mistakes accepted, and that old saying that I am not a mistake because I made a mistake, it actually is true. I find a safe environment to try new behaviors, like reaching out on the phone, eating lunch with OAers, or doing a task I have never done, like talk on a podcast audience I cannot see or even feel is out there. When someone is in the rooms a long time and still struggling with abstinence and physical recovery, I know that could be me at any moment. My disease does not go away. It lies in wait. And I use that word lies intentionally because as far as I'm concerned, my disease of compulsive overeating is lies, lies, and damn lies. So to keep protected from it, I need every one of you. I need to use the tools, and I must continually work the steps. I must give you the unconditional acceptance that I need myself in order to navigate this journey. My sponsor has a wonderful take on all this acceptance. What's in it for me, he says. The truth that eluded me for so long is that I cannot receive what I am unwilling to give. When I give it unreservedly, I get it back in spades. As long as I stayed on the outside, judging everyone and everything, I suffered. When I leave the results to my higher power, I get to relax and be acceptable, and so do you. My identity is that I identify with you as a compulsive eater. That is at the heart of being in OA, and I can't thank you enough for putting your hand in mine. And that's the truth. I'd like to reference some additional literature that I looked at when I was kind of preparing for this podcast, and I'm really enjoying taking a dip back. It's our Lifeline sampler. It's been around a long time, but boy, there's a lot of good stuff in it. But I can mention in particular, on page 72 is a story called The Only Requirement, and on page 81, a second look at Tradition 3. So in addition to the 12 and 12 and the AA 12 and 12, I looked at those stories as well and really found them valuable. So I also was posing some questions that could be a prompt for discussion or a prompt for writing, and those stories were really helpful for that as well from the Lifeline sampler. But one question was a desire to stop eating compulsively. What do I really, quote, desire, unquote? What do I really want? What is my desire about? I think getting to the heart of that helps with my honesty. And then the second question was about being a compulsive overeater. Do I really identify myself as a compulsive overeater? You hear so many relapse stories where people feel cured and they stop working their program, and then that's where they fall off a cliff. How do we fight that lie? In other words, we are given a 24-hour reprieve based on our spiritual condition, and that just has to be renewed every single day. But our disease wants to tell us, oh, look, you're on a roll, you're doing great. How do we fight that lie? Okay. Well, that's it from me. I hope that there's folks who would like to share on this. I find that this particular belonging type tradition, that I get to be a member of this group completely, is one of my favorite traditions. I hope that it's one that works for you too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was a wonderful share. Before we move on to any other folks who would like to share, and also to make up for a fault on my end, I forgot to announce the title of this workshop, which is All Together Now We Are Reaching Out Our Hands, which is sort of the overridging title for both the concept and the tradition that we're discussing today. So I want to remind you again that this workshop is being recorded and will be posted on the OA website. So if you do speak, and we hope you will, it's considered implied consent to have your voice and your share recorded and posted. Please use only your first name or a fictitious name, and everything's open for sharing now. What you do is press *6 to unmute, and then when you're done sharing, press *6 to mute yourself again so we have a quiet line. All right, who'd like to share first?
Hi, I'm Meg. I'm a compulsive overeater. I think Tradition 3 is my favorite tradition because no matter how I'm doing in the program, no matter how I feel about myself, no matter if I'm at a healthy weight or if I'm not, as long as I'm coming to the program, I'm welcome. I belong. And so wonderful to have this being part of, something to be part of. When I was before OA, I felt like an outsider. I was either too big, or I was too smart, or I was too dumb, or I was too awkward, or I was too good. Here, I just belong. I'm a compulsive eater, and we're all together now working on our recovery because we have a solution in the 12 steps and 12 traditions and 12 concepts. So I'm just so really grateful that I'm not in the food, that I'm maintaining a healthy weight, that I'm abstinent one day at a time for many years. I'm really grateful. The program has saved my life, has saved my marriage, and given me a life. So I'm really grateful to give back. Thank you for doing these workshops.
Thank you, Meg. Someone else who'd like to share?
Hi, this is Glenn from Pennsylvania. Can I share?
Sure, Glenn, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Glenn, and I'm powerless over food. When I think about Tradition 3, I think about like the origins of it in AA, where when they were a new society and they were so small, they went through their growing pains, and they had situations come up like, I mean, they were all men, and at one point there was a woman that came along, and they were afraid to let her in because they thought, you know, they had to keep their, you know, they had their conversations amongst, you know, themselves at meetings, and they were afraid what would happen if they let a woman in. And there was another instance where there was a man who had at the time a different sexual preference than other members did, and they were really afraid what was going to happen once again to their society, you know, if they let them in. And after a while, I mean, they realized that there were certain groups that were just, they had all these different requirements to, you know, as to whether someone could, you know, be a part of their society. You know, one of the things that came out of it was that, you know, who are we to say that, you know, if you have a problem, in their case with alcohol, that we can keep you out. Those that they tried to keep out, and then the one person was saying, you know, like, you know, I've got no other place to go. And so I'm really glad this tradition exists for us, because there are so many different requirements for, you know, to join different organizations in our world today, and one of them is, you know, financial. And I don't have to have a dime to be a member of Overeaters Anonymous. I don't have to meet any certain criteria except that I want to stop overeating. It's so important to me, too, as a person that's been in the program a while, that when I see, you know, new people coming in, geez, so many little things bother me and stuff like that, and I get judgmental. And, you know, it's like the only if they have a desire to stop eating compulsively, they have every right to be there just like I do, you know. And so, and I'll just say this last thing, and that's just that I really like it because it's such a simple thing. The only requirement. We have one requirement, you know, and I'm a kind of person that just makes things complicated, and I love the simplicity of it. There's such a beauty in that. It helps me. Just listening to that, hearing that tradition just reminds me of about the idea of keeping things simple. So I'm glad that I belong, you know, just for that reason, and that anybody else that wants to stop eating compulsively is also belongs too. So thanks very much. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share, and thanks for having this workshop.
Thank you, Glenn. Would someone else like to share?
I'll share.
Yes, go ahead,
Hi, I'm Marcy. I'm a compulsive overeater from New Jersey. And Tradition 3, I know I will always be a compulsive overeater no matter how long I abstain, one day at a time imperfectly. I was just talking about this at a meeting last night. I've been abstaining since August after an 8-year relapse where I didn't come back to the rooms except for maybe a couple of times. And the other night, my boyfriend had these little Easter round things on the table, and I said to myself, you can have just one. I said, no, you can't just have one. You know you can. You won't be able to stop. So I'm always going to have this irrational way of thinking about food. And 98% of the time I don't obsess about food. The only time I think about food is at meal times. And sometimes I do get too focused on the weight, but I know it's not about that. It's about the steps, about becoming a better person emotionally and spiritually. But to answer the question, what's my desire? Even no matter how long I've been in program, I still want to be able to eat whatever I want, whenever I want, and not gain weight. And it just doesn't happen that way for me. So I'm really grateful for the rooms and for OA and my sponsor, and I'm just going to keep coming back this time, no matter what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Someone else like to share? Hi, this is Stephanie. I'm going to take a moment to share. One of the things that I love about this title, Altogether We're Reaching Out Our Hands, and the wonderful question that Pat posed about what do I really want, is that when I first came in, I just wanted not to be fat. And the people reached out their hands, and they showed me that there was a place where I could come and I could not be fat. And when I was in OA for a while, I realized there was more than just not being fat. And people reached out their hands again and said, I can show you the steps. I can show you the traditions. I can show you how you can change. So I'm so grateful that all the way along the line, people have shown me ways to identify in OA. No matter where I was, OA rose up to meet me and to greet me and to make me feel welcome. And I am ever so grateful for that. I have a friend around here that talks about that OA is her logical family, not her biological family, because some of us grew up in pretty crazy families, and it's nice to have a tribe, a place where I feel like I belong. And when I say to somebody, you know, this Wackadoo on top of the refrigerator was calling my name, they don't go, what? They know. They smile and they laugh and they know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm really grateful to be in Overeaters Anonymous, and that members of the group were so kind and loving to me, and that they reached out their hands and they made me feel welcome. Because I know at that first meeting, I couldn't have told you what it was about, except that people were nice to me, and that's what drew me in for the second meeting, and so on and so on. So very grateful that we have this that this tradition exists. We have time for another share if someone else would like to share. Together now we are reaching out our hands in Tradition 3.
Can I share?
Sure, go ahead.
One of my experiences with OA, as far as people reaching out their hands to me, is I had only been in OA several months when my husband got a job in Germany, and as fate would have it, and higher power arranged that we went to the only place in Germany that had an English-speaking OA meeting. Those ladies in that meeting reached out their hands to me and grabbed me as a newcomer just about to OA. And I have been forever grateful to that. And I was able to pretty soon after that go to their yearly retreat, where I met a whole bunch of people from all over Europe in OA that were also reaching out their hands. And I was so scared about going to Germany that I was going to lose this newfound, gift of OA. And so it just really made me think that how grateful I am to those folks in the Region 9 English Language Service Board in that area that helped me so much. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for sharing. Very much appreciated. Okay, this is going to be the last call for sharing before we go into halftime. Would someone like to share? All right. If not, we'll have an opportunity after our second speaker. I just want to remind you before we get to our second speaker, we are self-supporting through our own contributions. And while OA is not about money, if we are to survive, we do need to be self-supporting. That's our Tradition 7. And one of the ways that we can do that is purchasing literature, and another is by making contributions. And when you do that, I really heartily recommend that you use our workshop number, which is 82278. You can do that by going to our website. There's an opportunity to contribute there, or you can mail in a contribution. So thank you all for doing that. We're going to move on to our second speaker, who, through the gift of technology, is recorded, pre-recorded. She's from England, and this is kind of a difficult time for her to share. Her name is Pam L.
My name's Pam, and I'm a compulsive overeater, and I'm from England. I've been in OA 16 years, and I've been abstinent for about 14 and a half years, and I've lost 49 pounds in total. I'm not a very fluent speaker, so I hope you'll forgive me if I read out my share. I went to my first diet class at the age of 21, and I joined OA at the age of 51. I had a happy upbringing, although I was bullied at school, and I soon learned that it was easier to do as I was told rather than to argue my point. This behaviour continued throughout my life, and I became an expert people pleaser. I would never give an opinion without looking at the faces of the people around me to see which way everyone else was swaying. I gave up the responsibility of making decisions within my marriage, so it was not my fault if things went wrong. I had 30 years of compulsive overeating, attending every diet class imaginable. The only time I felt worthwhile was when I received the badge or certificate which told me I had reached my goal weight. I will never forget the degradation I felt when I got on those scales, only to be told by the leader that I had not lost any weight, or even worse, put some on. I would put on my lightest clothes, take off my jewellery, and I even made sure I was not wearing my underwired bra. I tried everything, including hypnotherapy and laxatives, but nothing worked. Outwardly, I was successful at balancing running a business with 3 children, but it was 30 years of pain, self-loathing, low self-esteem, being completely insane around food, being completely self-obsessed, living in my head and not being fully there for my family. I would tell the shop assistant that I was having a children's party so she wouldn't know all the food I brought was for me. I ate my children's Easter eggs and I had to replace them, sometimes several times. I ate my husband's chocolates he kept in the cupboard because he took so long to eat them, pretending to myself that he hadn't noticed, and I hid chocolate all round the house. My worst memory was when I had cooked a chicken and carved as much as I could from it. You know, there were always bits of flesh left in the crevices of the bones. I was holding the chicken carcass in both hands, gnawing away at the bits of meat on the bones, when I looked up and my husband was standing outside at the kitchen window, looking at me with both shock and amusement. I wanted the floor to swallow me up. I was so embarrassed. I isolated both emotionally and physically, and I ate. I can remember one occasion when I called into the baker's shop and newsagents, buying chocolate and cake on my way to work, having already eaten my breakfast. It was early and I was the only person in the car park. I stuffed all this food down me and I cried while I was doing it. I cried because I didn't want to be eating it, but I just couldn't stop. It was such insane behaviour. By the age of 51, I realised that I just couldn't diet anymore. The problem seemed to be in my head. If only I could eat normally like everyone else. I'd never heard of OA, but I saw a short story in the local free paper by an OA member and realised that here was someone like me. I went along to the next meeting and knew straight away that this was where I belonged. These people understood me. I felt completely at home. It was such a relief that I cried through most of that first meeting. I really wanted what they had, and I was prepared to trust that I could have that too. I walked into that meeting in total desperation and left feeling full of hope. I found myself a sponsor and started to work the steps. Finding a higher power for me was very difficult. My husband had died of cancer 2 years before I found OA, and I just couldn't believe in God. My sponsor suggested I act as if and to trust her. I wanted what she had so much that I did as she said, and the miracles slowly started to happen. I prayed every morning for abstinence and for the compulsion to overeat to be removed. I didn't know who or what I was praying to, but I was prepared to do it. Over the first few weeks, abstinence was white-knuckling it. I felt I was dieting, but one morning I got up and suddenly realised that I hadn't thought of food yet. It used to be the first thing I thought about before I even opened my eyes, and constantly during the day. I also noticed that I was holding my head up when I walked along the street, instead of looking down, not wanting to catch anybody's eye. I gained more confidence, my self-esteem grew. One day I even realised I was feeling happy. There was no way I was doing this myself. It could only be a power greater than myself. So I came to believe. I love the quote my current sponsor gave me. A weak faith in a strong plan is better than a strong faith in a weak plan. And I suppose that was where I started, but was eventually able to have a strong faith in a strong plan. And that is another of my miracles in OA. I was encouraged to give service outside of my group very early on in OA. A member of my group took me to my first intergroup meeting just a few months after joining. and I loved the business side of things, the buzz of it, and also mixing with other members with so much recovery. Within a year, I became intergroup rep on behalf of my group and continued to give service at intergroup level for the next 10 years. I took on several roles, including secretary, vice chair and chair, and also had the privilege of attending the World Service Business Conference twice and the Region 9 Assembly twice, held in Barcelona and Israel, and I was on various committees. I really didn't think I was qualified to carry out these roles, but I was able to ask for support, and my confidence grew as I learned. I was told that God doesn't call the equipped, He equips those He calls, and I believed and trusted them, despite my fears. I was able to trust that God would help me to stick to my food plan whilst travelling to different countries and in different time zones, and to help me to stay abstinent. The miracle was that in most situations it hasn't been an issue. I planned and it turned out okay. I was out of my comfort zone for much of those years, but I trusted my sponsor, who encouraged me, and above all I trusted God to give me the tools to do the job. I also had to learn to trust other members to carry out their own tasks instead of thinking that I was the only one who could do them, particularly so when I was chair of Intergroup. I had to trust the secretary to send out the information on time instead of me keep reminding her, and I learnt to delegate. I was able to do this within my own business as well, and I know that being in OA made me a more understanding and better employer. It also affected my dealings with suppliers, and I was able to sit down with them if there was a problem and calmly reach a solution. I've just found that this is just such a wonderful way to live my life. 4 years ago, I was encouraged to join the National Service Board of Great Britain, a big step which I was really fearful of. Again, I had to place my trust in all those who thought I could do it. I served 4 years as Literature Liaison Officer, chairing the Literature Committee, and was also Region 9 rep for 2 years, attending assemblies in Belgium and Poland. I stepped down at the end of my term in October last year. When I started, I knew very little about literature apart from actually reading it. I now know about copyrights, planning the printing of literature around the Strategic Publications Plan, preparing artwork, communicating with printers, and proofreading. I have now stayed on as a member of the Literature Committee, responsible for the printing of literature in the UK, a role I certainly wasn't equipped for a few years ago. It has been such a privilege to give service. I have grown as a person and learnt many new skills, including how to chair a meeting, preparing agendas and minutes, coping at Region 9 meetings with members whose first language is not English, and reminding myself to be tolerant, which was difficult at times, as well as the knowledge I've gained around literature. I flew to the USA and other countries on my own for the first time in my life. I've served with members who have such strong recovery, and I hope some of that has rubbed off on me. Most of all, I have had the privilege of being able to give something back in thanks for my wonderful life. I could not have done this without having the willingness to trust God to get me through without making too many blunders. I now work steps 1, 2 and 3 on any situation that crops up in my life and trust the outcome to God. The outcome is not always what I want, but I know it will always be what is best for me. I'm a much stronger person, and as well as trusting God, I can trust myself. I have learnt to trust my judgment when working on committees and to ask if I need help. I can now trust that I can go on holiday and survive Christmas and other bank holidays whilst remaining abstinent, which is another miracle. 6 years after my first husband died and 3 years after joining OA, I met a lovely man. He was 48 and I was nearly 55. It brought up so many fears, especially around my body image. I spent half of our first date talking to him about OA and thought he would think I was mad and I would never see him again, but he came back. He was obviously a glutton for punishment. I remember getting down on my knees and explaining to God all about my insecurities and asked him that if this is not meant to be, please show me. But our relationship just got better. It wasn't always easy building a new life together after me having had a mainly happy 30-year marriage to my first husband and my boyfriend having a difficult 22-year marriage to his wife, from whom he had only been separated for 6 months when we first met. But we trusted each other, and I trusted my higher power and talked through the problems as they arose. It was so wonderful bringing OA into this new healthy relationship, and we married 6 years ago. 2 years after we met, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and we were devastated. It was explained to me that prostate cancer is nothing like the aggressive cancer my first husband had, and I trusted the medical profession and my higher power. He had radiotherapy and has been in remission for 10 years. The doctors now believe there are more cancer cells growing, and whilst I am preparing this share, we're waiting for the result of the scans. I'm not telling you this for you to feel sorry for me, but I really am trusting the outcome of all of this to God. I've never eaten on it, and I have no control whatsoever over the outcome. So there is no point at all me worrying and stressing about the possible scenarios in the future. We live our lives as fully as we're able to. We enjoy the same things and are happy together. I'm human, so of course, if I think about the results of the tests, I have not a fear in my stomach, but I push the thoughts away. In the old days, this would have all been such a big drama with me being at centre stage. I would really like to say that I go floating through life now on a cloud and that I never worry about anything. I really wish that was so, but I'm human and sometimes I can run myself ragged over a problem before taking a deep breath and reminding myself it doesn't have to be like this anymore. I then hand it over to my higher power to deal with. I can still feel fear, which is such a negative emotion, and I don't let it affect my life like it did in the past. My food plan has changed a great deal since I came into OA, but it is 3 meals a day with no snacks except in exceptional circumstances. For example, if I'm not eating until very late, I will allow myself a piece of fruit. I eat as healthily as I can with low fat, only occasional bread, and I am mainly sugar-free. I go out to dine regularly, trust God and make a healthy choice, but I don't beat myself up if it has an ingredient I do not usually eat, obviously providing it's not a binge food, which I can't eat, and I enjoy my meal. I no longer weigh myself. I can tell by my clothes if I have put on a few pounds, in which case I look at my food choices and portions and adjust accordingly. It is such freedom not to have to worry about any of this anymore. Occasionally, if life is difficult or I am extra tired, the obsession to overeat returns, because I will always be a compulsive overeater, but I pray for the obsession to be lifted, and if it is still a problem, I will text my food through to my sponsor for a few days until I feel stable again. I would love the obsession to be lifted for good, but it used to be there 100% of the time, so I am happy to settle for 10%. I have the tools now to deal with it. I never ever thought I would be grateful to be a compulsive overeater, but I can't imagine not being part of OA and living my life using the 12 steps in the OA program. I like the For Today quote on the entry for the 20th of November in the For Today book. There is more to be experienced in surrendering my life to a higher power than I can ever imagine. My life really is beyond my wildest dreams, and I thank you so much for listening to me. It's been a real privilege to share with you. I was asked to prepare 2 questions. So question 1 is, can you remember a time when you were young when you had difficulties trusting someone? What happened and how did you feel and what did you do about it? Can you think of a recent example and how you dealt with it whilst in OA? Question 2 is, how have you used trust in step 6, particularly when a character defect returns? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy, and thank you very much, Pam L., for a wonderful share. Now we're going to open up for sharing from folks who are on the line. Again, our topic is All Together Now, We Are Reaching Out Our Hands, and the share that we just heard was on Concept 3, which is the right of decision based on trust makes effective leadership possible, and the principle is trust. So please feel free to press *6 to unmute, and then when you're done sharing, press *6 again so we can have a quiet line. We're open for sharing now.
Hi, this is Cindy. Can I go?
Thank you, Cindy. Go ahead.
I want to thank both speakers, but I got tickled when I listened to the last share because for years I've shared that one time at a weigh-in I went in and made sure I took off everything except my outer clothing to be weighed in hopes of losing maybe an eighth of a pound. And so to hear another compulsive eater share that they had done the same thing, I knew I was not the only person out there that had ever tried that. So that tickled me. And then I really appreciated the share about trusting that whatever role I'm in, I get to let the other people do their part too. She talked about, as an intergroup chair, trusting that the other work would get done without my managing it. I, too, have done a lot of service over the years, and just letting go and having faith, I still tend to get in there and try and organize the direction things are going to go. But I've had people tell me it'll get done even if they don't do it the most efficient way. And that has given me some peace in the last couple of years of just letting the other person do their part. And whether they do it the way I would do it or not, trying to just accept that. It doesn't always work. I still have character defects, but it certainly helps. The other thing I wanted to mention is this is a little bit about service, and those of us who've given a great deal of service, it gives me peace to know that a lot of us have found our way in OA, and that service is a very important part of our recovery, that belonging and that sense of accomplishment. I mean, who else would let you just say, I'll volunteer to do that, and they say, oh, okay, we'll let you. We didn't have to go on job interviews. We didn't have to prove our educational background. We don't even have to prove that we're going to be competent, because I've had friends that I encouraged them to do service, and they took on a role that they hated, and they came back and they said, Cindy, I can't do this. And I said, that's okay. Just admit that. Just admit it, and somebody else will step up. And that happens too. So that feeling of belonging, not just because I'm a compulsive eater, and I have found great relief in this fellowship from my compulsion, a huge piece of that for me is being a part of. And being a part of is being free to offer myself to help others and to take assistance or help from others. I just find that that's how it works, and it's just amazing to me how it works over and over, and to hear from other people whose recovery is strong because they offer to give of themselves. And with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. We have an opportunity for someone else to share. Just press *6 to unmute. Just a reminder, our topic today is All Together Now, We Are Reaching Out Our Hands, with the principles of identity and trust.
May I share?
Sure, go ahead.
I so appreciate this series of service workshop, and the first speaker, Pam, quoted a phrase I love, but it's never meant more than it has today. Yesterday, I bought something on sale that's a very vicious trigger food, and I bought it for my daughter in Issaquah, who is ill and in the hospital, and I wanted to take it to her as a treat. I ate it. I devoured it on my way. And I am so mad at myself. I am bulimic, hanging on to my abstinence in that regard, led me into the set-aside prayer, Roseanne's prayer, every prayer I know and that helped me. And I thank God for I made a mistake, but I don't have to be the mistake. Thank you for the service of this podcast.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing. We have an opportunity for one more short share if someone would like.
Hi, this is Meg again, compulsive eater, California. I'd like to share about trust. In doing service in OA, I learned to trust myself as well as trusting others. Doing service brings up all kinds of my character defects and gave me an opportunity to work with them with the steps. Also, learning to trust others helped me to trust myself. So it worked both ways. As I learned to trust myself, I learned to trust others and vice versa. And a lot of that happened through service because I would take a position not knowing what to do, and I'd carry through my commitment and feel like I could trust myself now. It's good practice. Anyway, I'm really grateful for the program. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg. Does anyone have a burning desire before we draw this to a close? Thank you all for sharing. Very much appreciated, particularly our speakers, Pat O. and Pam L. I want to remind you that the opinions expressed here today are those of individual OA members and do not represent OA as a whole. We hope that you'll join us here next month. It will be April the 10th, which will be the second Sunday at the same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where the topic will be There Are No Musts, but is it good for OA as a whole? And it will be Tradition and Concept 4 on autonomy and equality. So we hope to see you again then. I'd like for us to close this workshop with the third step prayer, after which the meeting will be closed. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you here next week, I hope.